is implementing measures to ensure a more economical and effective representation at the Baku, Azerbaijan conference. Strategic consultant Dipo Oyiwole joins us now in the studio to analyze the government's approach and its implications for Nigeria's participation in global climate change discussions. Thank you for joining us again on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And this, latest press release by the government, had a lot of information and, will I say, a number of revelations, emanating from last year's COP29 conference, yes. And now, the moves to, clear all the mess that, the government incurred, that, according to it, says it was quite distracting and, there was a lot of misinformation in the air at the time. But what do you make of, this move by the government now?
Okay, well, this one, I'd say it's a step in the right direction. Shows that they listened and they took well to feedback. Yes, saying that they're cutting costs in that particular regard, for me, I'm not sure it's quite impressive, because I believe what a lot of Nigerians would like to see is that the costs of governance is cut with how we do run our government internally. So it's not really about the delegations, okay? Because this is a once-in-a-year event, and saying that comparatively to what is spent last year, we are not spending this year. The question is, in the first place, we weren't supposed to even spend that last year. So that's that. But I would want to see government cut costs in various areas, as much as many Nigerians would, because we've been having this conversation about government spending for over a decade now, that we run an expensive government and we really cannot afford it. Every branch of government, it's the cost of running it is just too expensive. How much it's costing us as a nation to keep folks in the National Assembly is really unheard of. And I believe that now will be a good time to discuss the review of their salaries and the modalities of how that is fixed. Because, I mean, you work in TVC, it's the HR that fixes your salary. You don't fix your own salary. And I believe that there should be some mechanism in place that should be able to help us get that done. Their salaries, their bonuses, and all of that. We hear all manner of figures every other year, and we're wondering what is really going on in this country, because truth is we really cannot afford it. We cannot be spending like we have unlimited amount of money or unlimited resources, and we then look back and tell the people that are being led to say, okay, tighten your belts, we must practice austerity measures, while the people that are leading us are not heeding to the same gospel. That will not work.
Okay, so one of the arguments that was advanced, was it last year or previous years, because Nigeria has a portion for having large delegations to, events or conferences like that of COP27, 26, now 29 that is upcoming, which the government is saying that, listen, we want to cut as much cost as we can. But they said Nigeria is a giant of Africa. How do they know we're giants when we now decide to go with just few people instead of the, large contingents of Nigerians who will be attending? Maybe the more we appear, the larger the impression we are giving to the international community. I don't know whether you buy that kind of argument.
Okay, so I believe it was Margaret Thatcher that said something. She said, if you have to tell someone you're a lady, then you're not. So if what we would use to show that we're truly the giant of Africa is the size of a retinue that would form a proper voting bloc in any ward, then I think we're not really giants. Because what will tell if we're really giants of Africa or whatever status we claim to have or possess would be the quality of the conversations we go to have there at those particular events, not in the size of the people. Because in the end, when you look at having a retinue of 20 to 30 people, how many people really engage in those conversations over there? How many people actually make any meaningful impact? So it's not about.
So I believe that there are sidelines, of different events, where people talk about others for economy, agriculture, technology, the climate, effect, climate impact that we're having, the global experience and all of that. Yes. So there's so many other sidelines that these people, go ahead to engage, and even some other people network, personally for their own businesses, which will definitely come back to help the country. Do you not see that way?
So there's a place for all of that. However, when we have these huge retinues go for these particular conferences and conversations, and then we do not see anything reflective upon return, isn't that really a waste of money? So it doesn't matter if you go with 2 or 20 people. It's when we're able to properly evaluate the impact of those conversations in our own climate. Because I would like to ask someone in government, what was the impact of the COP29 that happened, that's held in Dubai, that they attended with a lot of people? What was the impact? What were the deliverables upon return? Were certain things communicated to the Nigerian people to say, you know what, these were the conversations we had, these were the side conversations we had, these were the ones we had in the main events, these were the other ones, these were the resolutions, these are the policies that are coming as byproducts from these conversations. We don't see any of that. So in the end, we're then asking that, is it even necessary that we attend all of these events?
Right,
Because,
and even I'm sorry to interrupt,
yes.
but that point you were making about the deliverables, and I remember if we recall COP28 when President Tinubu delivered a speech to the delegates, he said something about how Nigeria is really reeling from the harsh effect of climate change in the north. We have deforestation matters now in the south. We are seeing, of course, floods, persistent floods. And looking at the points that you just made, which
yes.
made me butt in, how would you view the fact that year in, year out, budgets are being, but does it appear that we are learning any lessons at all? Are the floods, not still living with us? Are we not still living with the harsh effect of floods, especially in this part of the country? And for people over there in the north too, they also have their own stories to tell.
Yes, so fantastic question, because so what I was alluding to earlier is these conversations ideally should emanate to actual policies that we are able to customize to our particular challenges within our own climate. You talked about flooding in the south. Interestingly, it may not be something that we will be able to solve entirely. However, there are certain things that we can do to limit the effect of said floods. There are certain things that we can do within our own environments, our local spaces, to ensure that they don't get flooded. I mean, every other day we see a lot of flooding in certain areas, and what do we see in the middle of the road when the water clears? It's a lot of rubbish, it's a lot of dirt, it's a lot of bottles, a lot of plastics, a lot of nylons, a lot of... So those are things that I would expect that after these conversations, we're able to have sound policies that address the issues that we can at least deal with as human beings, because in the end, excessive rains is an act of God. There's nothing we can really do about that. That it's too hot in the north, it's causing deforestation. There's nothing, we can't carry a black blanket and cover the sun. So those are acts of God. But what are the policies in place to ensure that people who are farmers, for example, in the north, are able to farm conducively, within conducive environments, to ensure that whatever they're planting, whatever they're farming, grows very well, the yield is good, and then we don't have issues of food crisis and all of those fruits of this chaotic tree. So it is important that we understand the purpose of these conversations, because if we will not be enacting any serious policies after these conversations, then I believe we do not have to go. Okay? Attendance isn't mandatory. It's not. We really do not have to go. All of us here, we're adults. It's not every wedding invitation that you honor. Not because maybe you have work to do, but sometimes you're like, you know what, I don't think I want to go for this particular event. Not even because you're tired or you want to rest, but just like, you know what, in terms of priority and showing some level of self-respect, I don't think I want to attend this particular event. So must we attend all of these events if we're not seeing the impact of it? I don't think it's really necessary.
So seeing the impact of it, maybe those in government might want to disagree with you, because they will tell you that they...
Not just government, in fact, when you look at, advocacy groups, for a big event as COP, the mother of all climate change events. Like you said, not many people would agree.
Absolutely. So, for instance, the very last one, COP28, we know that President Bola Tinubu signed an agreement with Olaf Scholz, as Chancellor of Germany, to increase grid capacity to 12,000 megawatts within 3 years. But you recall that PPI project was actually, the agreement was first entered in 2019.
Yes.
And to be implemented in 3 phases, although it has not yet seen the light of day.
Yes.
But we don't know how far that has gone. But do you not feel that this is one of the things, one of the gains that are expected to be recorded, from COP attending these conferences?
So when we say gains, we must be result-oriented, because it's one thing to have something documented on paper. It's another thing to have it executed. I mean, if, for example, I pick up one of the pieces of paper here and I say, you know what, I'm going to give you ₦1 million. And I say it's an agreement, we have a witness here, we do it in front of the cameras, and then we step off from here, off air, and you're asking me, bro, what's going on? And then I said, leave that one, it's just for the gram, it's just for the TV. Would you call it a gain that we signed an agreement? So we must be able to prioritize what we really see as gains and what we really term as objectives when we attend these events. We need something actionable. Now, it's almost a year now, if not a year already, since the last event that happened in Dubai. The MOUs that were signed, what is going on with them. You mentioned that the first one was signed in 2019 and then it's been coming in different phases. Have we seen the actual impact of it? What are they doing in terms of follow-up? What are they doing in terms of addressing issues if it's coming from the other side? Or what are we doing from our own side to ensure that we have all our ducks in a row so that our external partners can also come in to do what they have to do?
Perhaps saying that perhaps the issue we are facing, or maybe one of the challenges, is the fact that we have little communication,
yes,
from the government about the gains that we're recording from, our previous attendance of, different conferences, especially COP26. We talked about COP28, yes. 29 is the one that is, upcoming. So the one held in UK in 2021, where former President Muhammad Buhari said that Nigeria will reach net zero emission the target by 2060. The current initiative which the government is bringing on board is the CNG. They said that is cheap, and others are also talking about renewable energy. People are also installing solar, and they're introducing EV into the system. So do you feel that it is lack of communication? Maybe these projects are actually going underground, but we're not getting enough communication and to show our commitment to these targets?
Okay, well, I believe that's a critical element, because one thing we've always complained about in terms of how our leaders engage is effective communication, which for me, I still don't know why we're still having that current challenge with this current government, because we have a lot of bright people in those offices, but somehow we're not really hearing anything from them as much as we'd expect to. But yes, effective communication is one challenge, and I would like to reiterate something I've said here over the years, practically every year now, that they must understand that where there is no effective communication, there is a huge vacuum for assumption to fill. There's a huge vacuum for assumption to fill. So we must understand the effects and the impact of effective communication, because if you are operating within a system where there is a serious lack of trust with how government conducts its business amongst its citizens, the onus is on you that whatever you are doing, either it is little or it is large, that you find effective ways to communicate it with the people as soon as it is necessary to do so. Because we can't just assume that, they know, and people aren't really seeing the effects of a lot of the positives of the policies that are on ground. And in some cases, you'd have to do a personal deep dive to understand the positives of these policies. In some cases, you'd even have to do a deep dive to even understand the policies. And dare I say that it's not even every educated person that would understand.
How many people subject themselves to
that kind of discipline to say, okay, this policy came out. I think maybe even without doing a deep dive, maybe I heard it done somewhere in another country, or maybe it's been done in the past. These are the gains, or it's a conversation I've had with someone before, so I understand that it will be effective. So the government must understand that effective communication is one of the integral parts of leading effectively in whatever capacity you find yourself. Because somehow I believe that they prefer people assume, and in this age now where there's a lot of fake news, there are a lot of deep fakes, there are a lot of, I know that there are some of your colleagues that have been victims of that, where people have their face, they have your company logo, and then they are communicating something different. And the responsible thing that your organization has done has always been to come out to rebuff those and say that, you know what, this is not representative of our organization. These are fake items. These are fake things. That's how to communicate effectively, or else other people run with it. You see it on Facebook, you see it everywhere. So the government must understand that effective communication is one of the key pillars of leading effectively, or else you cannot then blame people for assumption. Because in the end, the human mind must be occupied by information about any particular subject at any given time. So if you do not provide the right information, there are people that have alternative agendas as well that will also see that they fill in that blank with whatever it is they're trying to fill it with.
Right, and it appears that the government is also towing that line, playing big on the role communication plays, because a lapse that was, detected in its outing last year, and now it's also seeking to correct that with the establishment of this portal, this transparency portal on climate change. On this, upcoming COP29 conference, it says Nigerians can even log on and, follow through on the Nigerian delegation's activities. But, apart from your advocacy for communication, I also want to know what you think about accountability. So the government is now saying that there are revelations in last year's, conference that certain government officials had no business, being there.
Yes.
And even goes on to say there was a $500,000 payment for the use of a platform outside the hall. And, it turned out that that was just, a waste of money. They could have used, inside the venue as against outside, that cost the country $500,000 in addition to other payments that it said were not needed. Now that it's having, it's looking back. Do you expect that heads should roll, or should we just move on as before?
Well, part of responsible leadership is also understanding the place of consequences. Because where you have people that have clearly wasted government funds, they must be seen to be dealt with. There must be some deterrence, or else all the English we spoke last year and the one we're speaking this morning will reoccur in November, and then nothing will happen. So because part of the reasons why we have most of the issues we have in this country right now is a lack of consequences. The consequences exist on paper, but the enforcement is a different conversation entirely. So if you have someone that was in charge of ensuring that we wasted that amount of money, what has been done to said individual? Okay, there must be consequences for actions, and we must understand that how we spend public funds, we must be accountable, we must be responsible with it, because in the end, these are funds that if they were brought in-house, if they were brought back into the country, you would find that $500,000 could do a lot in the lives of people. It would do a lot. Let's not even talk about how many schools it can build, how many hospitals it can revamp and equip, how many roads it can fix, how many things it can do to change the lives of average Nigerians. So we must be responsible with how we run government and with how we spend public funds. It is very, very important that there are consequences seen for actions, and there are consequences had for actions taken. Actions and inactions now, because if you then find that maybe someone also didn't do what they were supposed to do, or didn't communicate effectively, and then somebody just decided to take the initiative to go rent that particular space outside because the person that was supposed to coordinate it to ensure they did it inside, maybe they weren't communicating very well, or they were at loggerheads. So there should be an investigation done into that and other issues as well, to ensure that we're responsible with the way we disburse public funds and with the way we conduct ourselves anywhere, especially when we're representing the nation.
Let's look at these, with a broad view. Given the mixed results of COP27, what do you think Nigeria must do differently, or what must be done differently on a global scale at COP29 to achieve meaningful progress in global climate action as Nigeria attends?
So one of the something I alluded to earlier is, aside from having the most essential folks to attend the events, coming back, we must be able to sit down and say, within the first 7 days, what are the policies that we're able to enact from the conversations we had? I mean, and before we are able to come out with those particular documents, if it's going to be more than one, is we must be able to adequately communicate with Nigerians to say, this conversation that we had, this was discussed, that was discussed. I mean, we're in the era of social media. You can use X, formerly Twitter, for this. You can use other platforms to get this out there. These things, they're low-hanging fruits, right?
So do you not find it funny that even whenever the government, communicates, using X, for instance, that's social media, you see people just comment and say, how does it help me? How does it put food on my table? And that's the government talking. But people's reaction show that they just don't want to see anything from the government. What they want to hear is that we just don't want anything. And then you'll be asking, what exactly do you want? And you won't be able to pinpoint. So do you know if your government is actually doing enough using these platforms to communicate, but people just don't want to hear?
So I believe that part of effective communication is, one, knowing how to take feedback. The second is understanding how to, so feedback is data, okay? That for me, I mean, with what I do, we don't say there is bad feedback or good feedback, okay? Feedback is data. So the question is, what do you do with that data? So the data has shown from the feedback that the government receives that people are very upset with the government, people do not trust the government, people are angry, people are hungry. So you went for a climate change conference, and then you come back and you want to communicate the gains from that conference, the conversations you had from that conference. How about you look for a way to communicate that what we discussed there would ensure that certain policies come into play that ensure that food is cheaper because it will address agricultural challenges that certain folks are having in different parts of the country. So once we're able to enact policies that help the agricultural produce and then we have better yield, food becomes cheaper to you and it gets to your table a lot cheaper than what it is now.
Strategic communication.
Strategic communication. These things are very simple because you need to address it from the point of the challenge. You don't just say what you want to say and say that, okay, you know what, people should receive it how they want to receive it. You're not communicating effectively because, for example, if I come here and what I'm trying to communicate to you, I'm yelling at the top of my voice and then I'm vibrating and I'm doing all of this, that the government should do this and then people at home are wondering, is everything okay with this fellow? Even you that you're interviewing me, you'd have to maybe go on several commercial breaks while we're having this conversation. So it is understanding that it's not just you communicating what you're supposed to communicate or leaving it to the recipient to receive it how they want to receive it, but you must understand that you are also addressing something that is a challenge for them, especially when you're operating from the level of feedback. So understanding that that particular challenge is there, or those challenges are there, they must find ways to communicate effectively that these are the conversations we had at the climate change conference, these are the policies we are putting into place, and this is how these policies will affect your everyday life. So if you are saying that you're hungry, we must enact policies to ensure that agricultural yields increase so that the food you have will be cheaper. It's as simple as that, and that's one clear example. Because then again, if the government is not able to see how these policies affect the daily lives of Nigerians, what policies are there in the first place? And if those policies are not clear and true, what was the point of those conversations in the first place? So you see why I went back to, if we were not going to get any clear results or dividends from this, then maybe we do not attend. But if we must attend deliberately and with a lot of intention. Absolutely. To ensure that there are results when we come back to the country and not enact policies and drive it home for the people to understand.